half boy, half god, all hero. You're listening to Ranking Rick Riordan, a podcast where we rank Rick Riordan books, all 21 of them in the Riordan universe. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And I'm Clara. And today we're discussing Percy Jackson and the Olympians Book 3, The Titan's Curse.
This is both an audio and video podcast. Every other Thursday, we review one book in this Percy Jackson Riordan verse. And so it's every other Thursday on youtube.com/doingOK for video and podcast services aplenty.
So we got some lovely reviews on Apple. So a big thank you to Jess Renee, Watermelon Bubblegum, Emily BBG 321, Miss Kaylin 14, and everyone who has rated us as well. This really helps people find the podcast, join the fandom, and it's just really nice of you to take the time to do this for us.
Yeah,
so
it feels
Thank
nice.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thanks so much to them, and we shall now get into The Titan's Curse.
Yes.
Clara, thoughts?
Oh, God. I really like this one. I really like who this one has in it. I like the action. Yeah, very good.
Olga?
I really liked it. I had a little bit of a strangely hard time getting into it. I wasn't expecting that. Maybe you guys psyched me up too much with how good this book was gonna be. And I just binge read it and enjoyed it so much.
Once you found your rhythm.
Once I really got on the footing of it, because Sea of Monsters is so different from Lightning Thief, and this is so different from either.
Yep.
Because it just gets the benefit of being the middle of the story.
Yeah.
You're just, your characters. And this one, who it introduces, kind of as you said, Clara, it's the characters in it are so great. The settings are so interesting. The action sequences are phenomenal.
Yep.
What's not to love?
Yeah, so this one is definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite of the first five. We'll see when we read the next two. I think it has a couple problems that kind of bug me, but not nearly enough to stop me from loving the hell out of it. I really, really like the quest in this one, the locations we end up at, the use of the US. I love bringing in the hunters, expanding the universe, bringing in Nico, bringing in Thalia more. The villains are each in I'm not saying I don't necessarily love Atlas, but everybody else is really good in my opinion. I love how the skeleton people sort of follow them throughout the whole thing. And I just think it's a very enjoyable book because it's also a nice transition, and I feel into it being a little bit more mature. There's really not much in this one that I would complain about as far as being a little too silly or whatever. Olga might disagree.
I felt it still had its moments where I don't know if it was an editor thing or a Rick Riordan thing of being oh yeah, these are all ages. What did I do to make things to decrease the tension before? But let me throw it in here and there. AKA Grover. Grover was not my favorite once again.
Wow.
I know. I just, but even then, once they kind of took his character development moments, he was good. The stuff with Pan was really good, but I feel they were still oh yeah, he was our comic relief. Let's not forget that. Yeah. And then it just doesn't work for me with the tone of the rest of the book and with the character that he's actually become.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, we can, but maybe I'll hold off.
I'm going to say as my broad my broad issues with this, I think that arc-wise doesn't all necessarily come together. There's lots of little interesting character bits throughout, but I don't know that it all, it doesn't really have, how I talked about last week that I don't necessarily love Sea of Monsters, but you can look very clearly at this is how Percy started, this is how it continued into the climax, and how he grew from it and changed. And I feel like there's almost has multiple, not necessarily conflicting, but he has like a beginning arc that doesn't necessarily go anywhere, and then he has like a middle arc. When we can get into the specifics of those, but that's one of my issues. Also, I do think, I don't want to, go on and on about this, but I do think there are potentially some representational issues in this one, given that Zoe is like our only character of color so far, ? I think. And she dies. But yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that, in part because it's hard to say when someone is like a mythological, like that. I've never read anything about the Hesperides like being women of color. I've never like read it in that way or thought of it in that way, because they are like, are they Naya? What are they?
That's a good question, honestly.
Let me look that up right now.
Yeah. So I mean, but they do discuss, they discuss her skin tone.
Yeah, and it is
quite a bit.
I believe they say it's dark.
It's like caramel colored or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So just on that alone, but
Nymphs.
I kind of nymphs. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I personally read her more as just being like Mediterranean.
Which is, I suppose you could.
But
yeah. And again, I don't want to like super bash them, because I know their representation stuff gets better, and I really like Zoe and her arc in this book. So like, it's complicated, but if she's meant to be their first person of color, it's just not the best.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get into the recap?
Let's get into it. So we start with Percy, Annabeth, and Thalia getting dropped off at the military school in Maine by Percy's mom during their winter break. They sneak into a dance to meet with Grover, who has found two powerful half-bloods at the school, Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. Yeah, so
I really like how this one starts. I think this might be my favorite opening to any of the books I've read from him. I think that I like that it starts right off with a mission. I think I like that it starts with a like more serious mission, because very often the first chapter or two are like the silly stuff like dodgeball or whatever. And I just like the infusion of a few different like growing up elements, like the fact that it is a more serious bad guy that they're facing, that they have a real mission to do of getting these new characters that are interesting, and that they're at a dance showing them growing up a little bit more. And I like the snowy atmosphere and all that stuff. And then also, so I know one thing we had talked about is you were surprised that they did a time jump, because you thought that they'd pick back up with Thalia detreeing.
Yes. Yeah. I was a little, I'd read this book, but I really didn't remember the beginning of it. So I thought that we picked up right with Thalia, like almost paralleling Percy's journey into the camp of her, like going into the big house and being, like everything explained to her and whatever. So I was actually like upset that we missed out on that, even though this kind of just cut us right into the action. Yeah. I just felt like, I want to be more in Percy's headspace of like not being on the same page with her, and maybe jealous of her relationship with Annabeth and their history. Like, I don't know. I just felt like there was a whole lot going on, and I personally would have appreciated just like, a prologue kind of thing.
So I like how they did it, partly because I bet Percy doesn't get a huge amount of interaction with Thalia before they all go back to school. So we get just enough that they have some sort of relationship dynamic, and it's tense, which we could have predicted, and now we can see it in action instead of maybe a weird sort of like forced getting along. We're already in this kind of this conflict.
I think it would be a nice short story if they went back and did her first reacquainting herself to everything would be nice.
At this point, I don't feel like it's necessary given her her journey in this book. We don't need that.
I'd love to read something from her perspective. I don't know. I haven't done any searching around to see if there's anything written like that, but let us know, because I'd really like to read something from her.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Also, so we have the Percy and Annabeth dancing here. And I think that they actually handled the dialogue pretty well between the two of them in this scene. And it certainly, I think it shows how their relationship is evolving pretty solidly and with not too much time taken up.
Yeah. You talked about Percy's arc in this book, his journey, but I feel like it's not just a journey for him about himself. It's also finally movement on their relationship, romantic relationship. But they're not, hitting us over the heads with it, despite, someone's appearance later on. But nonetheless, I think that this is a solid beginning for his
romance part.
Yeah. Yep. Percy is feeling insecure around Thalia, so he decides to try to save the siblings from the monstrous Dr. Thorne all by himself. Thorne, a manticore, is too much for Percy, and he marches the three of them off to get picked up by a helicopter. Percy uses his empathy link, and Grover, Thalia, and Annabeth come to the rescue. Thorne is still holding his own until Artemis and her hunter show up. He disappears with a courageous Annabeth on his back.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of trimmed that down in our recap as much as I could. A lot of things are going on. Yeah. So, yeah, Annabeth saves one of, I think it's either Thalia or Percy. Then that's why she ends up getting disappeared. I really like Dr. Thorne. I think he's really intimidating. And
you do?
Yeah, you do not?
No, I like him. I just don't think he's super intimidating. But that's
yeah.
Well, I think I think he's the most formidable opponent that they faced up to this point. The fact that Thalia, Annabeth, Percy, and Grover are all fighting him and he was gonna win anyway.
Yeah.
I thought was really cool. Percy got saved, and then even the people who came to save him needed saving.
Yeah.
I thought was great. And again, a lot of this, we always come back to, I'm listening to an audiobook. I like the performance that they do for Dr. Thorne.
Do they do the French accent?
They do the French accent.
Yeah, I think that would have made it really fantastic. I tried to remember to do it in a French accent in my head, and I kept slipping.
Yeah, I also enjoy later at Blackjack's, everything's in horse. So everything has a whinny to it.
I just imagine a Boston Italian construction worker guy when I hear Blackjack talking, and no offense intended to compare them to horses, but it's hilarious in my head that way. Yep. So
yeah, but so I like him. I also like that he a lot of the time he stays in human form, which I think is an added thing that makes me be able to not think it's silly when I think of him in some because a lot of the other ones look so wacky or whatever. It feels less intimidating. But yeah, no, I really like him. I like this action sequence quite a bit. And the fact that we are in the snow, we have this helicopter going above. This is definitely one of those scenes that I'm excited to see brought to live action.
Yeah. This is also the first introduction, as you said, to Artemis. We have a new goddess in this case. I completely forgot that she was here. Yeah. Okay. I thought she came later. So this was so different, so exciting. The fact that this group of badass women are come to the rescue.
Yep.
Not just young girls, that whole thing. So I can see how this is just really cool for one of the target age demographics of these books, as well.
Yeah. Thoughts about the hunters in general? I really enjoy them.
I really enjoy them too. I love Artemis. I guess we can talk a bit more about her later, but I love that she looks like she's 12 years old.
Yeah.
I think that's a great choice. I love her in relation to Apollo. I love the aesthetics of Artemis in this book that are so vividly described. Later on, it's when she's in Olympus, it's she's walking and she's bathed in a column of moonlight or something like it's really good writing and it's just great.
Yeah, I love the thing of she inspired Santa Claus and stuff like that.
I love that so much.
This is our Christmas edition.
That is true, because Christmas starts at Thanksgiving here. So we meet the hunters, and Bianca chooses to become one despite Percy's protests.
What do you think about this?
Clara has thoughts.
I've been really trying to justify this. And I know she's a young girl with a huge amount of responsibility, but she makes this decision so dang fast.
Yeah.
I wish they had gone back to Camp Half-Blood and then she'd made the decision. Like, she makes it so quick. These people could have just been lying to her. She doesn't know what they're about, you know? Like, I don't know. And she just does it. And it feels like such a betrayal of Nico. And I mean,
and
she's
young.
She
does it before he talks to Nico too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so rash. Poor Nico. Also, I love Nico so much that like.
I agree. I was always, on Percy's side with this, where it just doesn't feel right. It would have helped for her to take a little bit longer to think about it. I also think this is one of those. This book is the first one where I feel like, man, it's a little too bad that they didn't already start going from multiple characters' perspectives at this point.
Yeah.
Because in the later books, you get not just first person, you get multiple characters. And like it would have been nice to have some Thalia chapters here. It would have been nice to have some Zoe chapters. And if we were in Bianca's head and not from... the fact that you're in Percy's point of view and he's thinking this is a bad call makes me agree with him.
And I mean, I think we can say objectively it's a bad call. I think it's unfair for her to have done it so quickly. She's young and it can be excused, but it's a bad call.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
It's that exact thing of it's an overcorrection of I've never gotten to be selfish and make selfish choices. So now that one is presented to me, even though it's more extreme than anything else, like for example, her and Nico going to different schools or something like that. It's just like such a permanent thing that if they hadn't gone back to Camp Half-Blood, she would have just left with the hunters and he would have just, after that horrifying encounter, would have just been alone with people he'd never met before. So if I put it, when I put it in those terms, I'm like, that's, like really awful. Yeah. But again, she's so young, and that's where I come back to criticizing Artemis, and that I can excuse as well because she's a goddess and like they are so flawed as well. So of course she doesn't realize or care about the selfishness of her like parameters of her terms. So it's like everyone is very flawed in their own ways that, while like off-putting, are also very understandable.
Yeah.
I personally wish that Bianca and Nico were not 10 and 12. I wish that they bumped them both up at least 2 years.
Yeah.
I think Nico being 10 isn't necessarily a problem in this book, but becomes a problem as we go on because it takes him so long to be anywhere near being a teenager in future books because he's only 10. Right. So like, I think that it would have helped him to be 12 and for Bianca to be like, oh, I've been watching him for the last like 7 years or something, but
that's one of the reasons that maybe just reminding us of people's ages that like Percy is so great in this book is because he's finally 14 and like he has his voice and his way of thinking, while still immature in a lot of ways and not like always there, is still like older than when he was 12, where he was really like still a kid. So it's just kind of interesting how Bianca's in that like age where Percy was not necessarily like the most likable character or the smartest, because he was a kid. And so I have sympathy for her in that way too. So and Nico's age being a problem, I think, is going to be more in the future, but he's like good here.
I think he's great here, and I love the magic thing. It bums me out that that's not official licensed anywhere as a thing.
Missed opportunity to make that dough.
I know, so many missed opportunities. I bet with Disney Plus, all of a sudden our wildest merch dreams are going to come true.
Apparently there is like there are like Camp Half-Blood like book club things throughout the country, And one of them has like a big championship myth and magic thing with like they made all these rules and made all these things, but like they can't sell them because it's not official.
Right. Artemis needs to hunt a serious threat that Thorne mentioned, so she orders her hunters to wait at Camp Half-Blood. She calls for Apollo, her twin brother, and he arrives in the Sun Chariot. He has Thalia drive the chariot, and it does not go well. Like, it really does not go well.
Oh, actually, I just realized I never wrote anywhere about when it's revealed that she has a fear of heights. But she has a fear of heights. That's a fun little wrinkle. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts about Apollo?
I love Apollo. I love Apollo and Artemis. I love the characterizations of these two so much. The end.
He just reminds me of like a lax bro who's getting an English writing degree.
Yeah.
Really
He's like my favorite. If you were to say he's like Jason from The Good Place, but also he's a poet and also he's the god of the sun and light. Like,
all right.
Yeah.
Favorite kind of character.
I'm excited for you guys to get to his books because there's something.
So at camp, Percy dreams of Luke tricking and imprisoning Annabeth. Zoe, the head of the hunters, dreams of Artemis being captured.
A quick little thing I want to say about this is I really prefer how Luke is presented in this book, that it's pretty clear that he's trying to protect Annabeth. And just in general, he has that like sickness thing happening, which I just think makes him a little more multidimensional because he's like, because you really believe that at the end that he's like begging Thalia. So
yeah.
He's more human here. Mm-hmm. He's more of a person. I'm happy they retcon a little bit of Sea of Monsters in place of this. I really like these dreams or like this whole time at the camp. It felt really different in part because of the setting, but also because of the urgency of Annabeth being missing and her importance. So,
and I think certain books like overdo the dream thing, and I think they did a good, like they found the right amount here.
Mm-hmm. They play capture the flag, hunters versus campers. Percy doesn't follow Thalia's plan and they lose the game. She and Percy face off until the creepy oracle shows up and delivers a prophecy. Everything about this, so good. Yeah. I don't know.
Yes. So, okay. I really love this. I love Percy versus Thalia. This is the thing where I feel like they drop for Percy. Yeah. Because I think they do a really good Act 1 for his arc with Thalia. And then it just becomes his love arc with Annabeth, which I like that too. But I think they do such a good job in the first third of setting up his insecurity, his jealousy, him not knowing how to navigate, not being the it boy anymore.
Yeah.
Tell me to shut up if this is jumping too far ahead. But like Athena suggests that Percy's fatal flaw is that he like will do anything for a friend, which like actually, or like a loved one, time and time again, we actually see him do not that. In a really cool, heroic way, that like the book 1 with his mom.
Yep.
He's actually smart enough to not do that. There could have been a really interesting place for this to be hubris, right? Like he has hubris where he thinks that he can be the, like he can win capture the flag. He can do this without anyone else. He can hold up the world. He can, like he is doing all those things that have negative consequences. Unlike Annabeth, who again thinks she can do things and then actually does them.
Well, I mean, he thinks he can hold the world, and he does. But
no, but you know the other thing, like he thinks he can do things by himself. He thinks he can go after Dr. Thorne.
Yeah.
Like
he thinks that his way is the most caring way, and the reason that he has his like version of arrogance is because he thinks he knows what's best for everyone, both to like win, protect people, and like save people. So, and I think that's the thing where he has a jealousy of Thalia, who people like immediately look to, assuming she has the right plan and the right answer, and yet he's like, oh, she's just gonna let us down. You know, it's that kind of thing, like and the jealousy of like, why aren't people looking to me because I could also have a valid plan.
I feel like, to me, his stuff in the first part of this book isn't fatal flaw territory as much as it's more growing pains territory of jealousy and, not wanting to feel like put aside and things like that. And also the thing that Chiron says pretty early on about how you're kind of headstrong and you don't really think your actions through. Mm-hmm. I think that like him going through and doing the thing for the capture the flag, I think is more about him being a reckless person than it is about him being like, I'm better than Thalia necessarily. I do think that I agree with you that the thing he did with his mom goes against the fatal flaw, but I think that's on purpose because that's
when he's being a hero.
Yeah, his thing throughout. I actually mentioned that when we talked about the first book, that is something that like is indicative of where he goes forward. Of the thing that he bumps up against again and again to more and more intense degrees is the idea of making the smart choice versus the love choice, like the heart choice. Like that he is someone who lets emotions push him in one direction and isn't going to do what Athena would do, at the end here, where she's like completely sterile. This is the logical choice. It might not be the most emotional choice, but like they should get killed off because that's a smart thing to do. And he is the opposite side of that coin, and that is something that repeatedly comes up for him. But that doesn't, just because he faces that doesn't mean that he isn't able to deal with it at the same time.
Away from it. Yeah. It's to show that there might be a point of no return for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, so in thinking about it, then I feel like this first act does get sort of to the end of the book as well, that there is a thread running through it, because this is one of these emotional, like, he's gonna hurt Bianca and Nico. I have to go immediately, no time to think. And it's one of those decisions, and it gets him in trouble. If we think about it in the context of that fatal flaw, which I do see now, that's a really good point, then it does help also to think about Percy's having one narrative plot here.
I just wish that there was a way for them to tie up Percy versus Thalia throughout the quest. Like, I feel like once they get on the quest, it's really not about them butting heads anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that if you got to a climax where he had to let her go and be the leader, and he was okay with that, to me, that would have,
But he does that. He does that in the fight versus Luke. He wants to fight Luke, but he realizes that's not his... I think it does come full circle. I think it is him, like, working... So they work together in a way... Thalia butts heads with Zoe. Zoe butts heads with Percy. But like they're all fighting amongst each other in a way, all like fighting for leadership on the quest because they're all going for different reasons too. So in that final fight, all three of them work together, and it really I think that Percy on purpose, like stepping back and just bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders and letting someone else be the action hero is his journey here.
I'll give you that. I still think that it could have been better.
I agree with that. I think it would have been nice to have maybe tensions rise a few more times. Once you come to the point of like calling on your godly parents' power is to like, face off with each other basically. And the only thing that stops you is a mummy. Like you assume that something like that is going to happen again.
I just wish there was a point where he was faced with a thing where he could make a rash decision again, think back to how it messed things up before for him and for his friends, and go, you know what? I'm going to let Thalia take the lead. And I just don't feel like that was hammered home in a good enough way.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
But also, I mean, they did sort of do that with Clarice in the last book. Yeah. So in some ways, I almost wish that some of that stuff had been saved for here with Thalia. And then they're going to...
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Moving on.
Clarice isn't even in this book, basically. So
she's fine.
She has her own journey.
Yeah. My point is that they just like drop a lot of things along the way and pick up new ones.
Yeah, I didn't even write down anywhere that he talks to Tyson a few times this time. Those are nice.
Yeah. So back to the prophecy. They need to send a mix of campers and hunters on a quest to save Artemis. They pick Zoe, Phoebe, Bianca, Grover, and Thalia. Percy protests, but Zoe will not bring a real boy.
Only goat boys.
Only goat boys who aren't real boys, even though Grover is like in love with the hunters.
I don't like that.
Yeah,
but I know that like satyrs and nymphs and nature.
Satyrs gonna satyr.
Yeah, it's like it's an unfortunate, creepy part of Greek mythology that I wish wasn't included. But oh well.
Yeah. Percy calls his mom and she tells him he should go on the quest anyway if he thinks it's the right thing to do. We also meet Mr. Blowfus, Sally's special friend.
I really like how that ends with Percy being happy for her and everything.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah. Again, it's him like not being in control of the people that he cares about and like working to let go and give people their space. So that's nice.
It's just a sign of maturity too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Blackjack, the aforementioned Pegasus, shows up and asks Percy to help a trapped cow serpent thing. Flying back, Percy sees Nico watching his sister talk to Zoe. Phoebe was tricked by the Hermes kids and got mildly poisoned and can't come on the trip. Oh well. Nico sees Percy and makes him promise to go on the quest and protect his sister. Never say that you'll protect someone in any action thing. It never ends well. That's all I have to say.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Oh, I mentioned to you earlier that they changed Blackjack's gender between the books. In the previous book, Blackjack is a woman or a
girl
a
Pegasus.
female horse.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's all the funnier that in my head she sounds like a middle-aged smoker. Construction worker man. Percy follows Zoe's van via Blackjack. Mr. D stops him at first and explains why he hates heroes, but ultimately he lets Percy go on the quest. I am so happy with the Dionysus stuff in this book. Mm-hmm. It feels in line with the character, but also an appropriate like progression given we're on the third story.
Yeah, it's the first time where I feel like it's worth nominating him for best god, whether he gets there or not. Like, I think that he actually shows dimension in this book. So
that's fair. Yeah. Using Grover's tracking spell to follow Artemis's hunt, Team Zoe arrives in DC. Percy sees Dr. Thorne nearby and follows him instead of the others using Annabeth's invisibility hat. Luke, Thorne, and the General are making plans. They plant dragon teeth and produce skeleton warriors that will hunt their prey relentlessly. Percy stops them from getting Zoe's scent, but they end up tracking him instead.
I love the skeleton warriors.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. I also love the baby saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adorable.
Yep.
The idea of just this like human mercenary like wrangling kittens in this like really intense setting. Yeah.
Do you like the inclusions of humans in this one?
Yes.
Yeah, it feels like it makes sense.
I say reluctantly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'll just say this without any specifics. There's a lot of things in this scene that continue on to things that I wish I could talk about right now, but I can't.
Okay. Tease for the future. Yeah. So Percy runs into Quest crew at the Smithsonian, and they have a big fight with the Nemean lion.
Nemean.
That Nemean lion.
Whatever it is.
I don't know.
Nemean.
I pronounce it a certain way in my head because I read it.
Nemean.
Nemean lion.
Yes.
Percy defeats him using space ice cream and wins his pelt and Zoe's respect. She accepts he's meant to be the fifth member of the quest.
I want to go ahead and nominate the Smithsonian for location.
100%. Yeah.
I used to live in DC, so I've been to these museums a ton, and it was so cool. Like, I can visualize in my head exactly how this battle plays out, and it's awesome, and I just love it so much. And I love all the little details about, like, Bianca not remembering that the metro exists.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good.
Yeah, I absolutely love that scene. Great action. I also think, like, the ice cream thing is the right level of silly, but also using the real world thing and like something that like is like most kids would be like know what he's talking about and stuff that, and I thought it worked out well.
It's exactly like Percy's perfect set of skills of like half boy, half god. Like, it's exactly at that intersection, and it works so well. Yes.
Yeah,
and
it's really good.
And I feel like this fight is appropriate as a follow-up to, like, the spooky, scary, like, ominous thing of the skeletons and the general and Luke. Like, it's really cool how that, like, heavy talking exposition scene leads directly into this.
Yeah.
So I just...
Yeah. And they do a good job of balancing everybody fighting the lion, everybody getting their action in there.
Yeah, and Thalia is, like, such a threat, even though she's using the shield with the Medusa's head, like, the Gorgon's head on it. Like, that's so cool. It's such a cool visual. Yeah.
Yeah, that the Medusa's head shield thing is really cool on, like, a gender studies level, because the whole thing of, like shield and protection is, like, generally a thing that's associated with, like, female power, but the fact that it's not just protecting her, it's pushing people away, that it's, like, making it offensive almost. I think is really cool.
And she uses it offensively too, because she, like, uses it to attack people as well. So it's just so good, so cool.
And it is really mythologically rooted too. So like great pull from Rick to think about how to do that. It's awesome magical item.
So after going on the subway and with a little help from Apollo, they end up on a car transport train. We learn about Thalia's mom and that Annabeth was considering joining the Hunters because her dad moved to San Francisco, which is filled with monsters. Percy dreams of Zoe's backstory involving Hercules, Riptide, and the Hesperides, although he doesn't really know what he's seeing yet.
Yeah, I like this whole backstory.
I did too.
Oh, me too.
I think I like almost want to know what I thought of as a kid. I was like, did I know enough about the Hercules myth to, like, remember, figure this out? Because I did figure it out here, but it was still like an exciting revelation.
The thing that I definitely didn't know enough about mythology to know was that her dad was Atlas.
Yeah, same.
But I think that I still got there because I figured out the general was Atlas and that her father was the one in the prophecy. But I wouldn't have gotten that just from, knowing that Atlas is the parent of the Hesperides. I did not know that.
They arrive in New Mexico, and Grover freaks out as he feels the presence of Pan and a gift from the wild. The skeleton warriors surround them using handguns. They seemingly cannot be killed except by Bianca, who burns one up. Interesting. Pan's gift, the Erymanthian boar, shows up, and they use it to escape the warriors. I was personally kind of bleh on this scene.
Really?
Like, not bleh. I was completely neutral on this scene. I kind of like the fact that Percy and Bianca got to talk. I'm glad that we didn't just completely drop the idea of Pan and, that being important to Grover from Sea of Monsters. But overall, the boar, the skeleton fight, it was just like there. It was just fine.
I like the skeleton part a lot. I just really like that they are such a, like, overwhelming force that follows them the whole way and that you can't kill. And I think that the first time I read this, before I knew who Bianca and Nico were, I don't think it would have immediately jumped out to me as obvious why she was able to kill them. So
they arrive in Arizona and make camp next to the junkyard of the gods. They realize that Bianca and Nico are from the 40s and had been in the Lotus Hotel and Casino for years until someone mysteriously took them out a few months ago. Anything to add?
Love the use of Lotus Hotel. Something they could have easily just never talked about again, but great world building continuing there.
So good.
Including with the junkyard.
Yep.
That's really cool.
And fun twist that Hades didn't break the pact.
Yeah.
Well, so, like, this is a great thing about Hades is that he's, like, the only person in all of the gods who, like, keeps promises. Like, promises are actually important to Hades. Like, he's married to Persephone, and typically, I mean, I know in here he has some extramarital affairs, but mythologically, like, he has really very few mistresses. He just, like, he's a serious guy. He takes his commitment seriously. He made a pact. He's not going to do it.
Plays with Cerberus when he has time,
Which he doesn't.
Tries. Yeah.
He's too busy.
Who wants to improve traffic. Yeah.
He's too busy with the bureaucracy to have affairs. So Ares and Aphrodite show up. She wants to talk to Percy about his quest for love to save dear Annabeth. She's taken a liking to him and promises to make his love life interesting. Ooh. Maybe a little tragic, too.
How do you guys feel about the introduction of Aphrodite?
Good. Psycho.
Yep.
But I kind of appreciate that. Like, she's the only one who can out-psycho Ares and in a completely different way. Yeah, so they really are perfect for each other.
I love that she finds love interesting and scary. Mm-hmm. You know, like love is a weapon for her. Yeah. And it can be used for, you know, she wants to see it in its she also understands like it's art too. Mm-hmm. You know, like how do we create this? Like the love will be best if there's the most drama. I really appreciate that as a dramatic like Leo.
Nice. Yeah, I think she's underutilized in this not necessarily in this book, but I think that in general that she's very intriguing character that I like whenever she pops up.
I'm intrigued, but I'm a little bit frustrated with their like interpretation, with his interpretation of her being like the goddess of love and beauty, because they really lean into it being like a vapid kind of thing with like all of her kids just like admire, like they don't want to break their nails, they don't want to get themselves dirty, they don't and she's like fixing her makeup, admiring herself. Like, you know, I wish that they didn't like lean into the narcissism of this necessarily.
I will say, like, in one of the other series, for sure, they really explore what her powers are, and I think you'll like it.
Yeah, and the multiple sides of her as a character, which is why I think that they do a good job in the future, but I wish that even in the future they pushed it even farther, but obviously we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really just a intro for her.
Yeah, it's just a little bit, and it is interesting. Yep. And Percy is right to be afraid of her.
Yeah, for sure.
So the group enters the junkyard with a warning not to steal anything. Don't touch anything. Don't steal anything. Don't eat the junk inside of it, Grover.
So who actually warned them? I was trying to remember.
I thought it was Aphrodite.
Aphrodite.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just ignored her like idiots.
Like when a god tells you to listen, you should.
And it's not hard to listen. You definitely do it.
Yeah.
This scene reminds me of Aladdin.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The Cave of Wonders.
Yeah. So Bianca tries to steal a mytho-magic action figure for her younger brother. Because of this, she awakens a defective Talos. The group battles the automaton, and Bianca enters him via a maintenance hole in the left foot to destroy him. She succeeds, but dies in the process.
And the land without rain.
The prophecy. Dun, dun, dun.
So, in general, this is the first book where we have, like, significant deaths. How do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like it fits tonally? Do you think they handled them okay?
It makes sense, given it's Greek mythology. That stuff's not happy.
Yeah.
So.
For me, everything with Bianca, I totally forgot, like, the extent to which Bianca is, like, she appears, she joins the Hunters, and she dies. And every major thing that happens to her, I feel like is just like, whoosh, whoosh. Like, you turn around, you miss it. And this death sort of felt the same way. I feel like her death overhangs later books in a way that Zoe's doesn't.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's sort of just like, oh, all right, bye.
Yeah.
Whereas Zoe's is much more emotional.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That I feel like Bianca resonates longer, but Zoe was the fuller character, and in this book feels like the actual death as opposed to Bianca, who just kind of feels like an afterthought.
Yeah.
But,
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Which actually, if I can say in terms of thinking about representation again, I will say Bianca's whole existence feels very much like those tropes of like, you just kill one of the female characters to give the male character some development.
Yep.
and that's Bianca and Nico.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't disagree there. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
So they.
But I love Nico.
Oh. I mean, and she also is more. She still has a lot more agency than that trope usually affords that character. I'll give her that much.
Yeah.
Both in, choosing to enter the Hunters, choosing to steal a thing for her brother, and then choosing to go out because she was the one who made the mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
she doesn't steal a thing that'll be like, this is the cure to his poisoning or this it's a toy for him because she feels bad for leaving him. So
I don't disagree that trope is there, and I would even argue that maybe it's there with Zoe for Thalia too. But to a much lesser extent, A, because it's supporting a female's story arc, and B, because Zoe's a more full character. But I do think Bianca has more there than oftentimes within this trope.
They arrive at Hoover Dam and sightsee in honor of Annabeth. They make some damn good jokes, and Percy runs into the cow serpent, aka Bessie. She seems to be warning him of something.
A, love Bessie.
Yeah.
B, love Hoover Dam.
Yep.
C, I enjoy the damn jokes quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
It's the right kind of joke for them. It's the right time for a joke, because I really do feel their need for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cute.
Yeah.
And I love the
so
location.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love that Zoe doesn't get it. Someone always has to be left out, and I feel bad for her, but it also makes sense.
I love it.
So the skeleton warriors attack and Percy flees. Percy accidentally attacks a mortal girl named Rachel Elizabeth Dare with his sword, but it goes right through her, fortunately. Turns out she can see through the mist, and they have an awkward exchange that culminates in her saving him from a skeleton. With some help from Athena and her angel statues, the group manages to escape to San Francisco.
Cool. So the intro of Rachel. How much do you remember, Rachel?
Nothing.
Oh, interesting.
All right. Well,
so let's not talk about her too much.
Yes,
I figured she was important, but let's not get into that.
I like her introduction. It made me think when I was writing this recap, I assume that Annabeth's dad can see through the mist too. They make it seem that way.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Cool intro for her. I think they definitely hint at her return at the end of this book, where he's still thinking about her.
Yeah.
Also, this happens right after Aphrodite says she's gonna make things interesting.
Yeah. Percy wrestles Nereus, the old man of the sea, and learns that Bessie is the Ophiotaurus. He's the monster Artemis is seeking. Burning its entrails will give a person the power to destroy Olympus. I love this.
Me too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love how Greek mythology this is. I love how a sacrifice is one of the most powerful things you could possibly do. I love the fact that Bessie comes willingly to the person who's going to sacrifice him. That's actually a crucial element. And hey, for all you ancient Greek sacrifice nerds out there, you need a sacrificial animal to go willingly. Otherwise, it's a bad omen, and the sacrifice won't be good. So that's the fact that he includes that. Come on, is so good.
Did you see it coming that Bessie was the monster?
No, I think I forgot about that.
I think that's a fun twist for sure.
I kind of was getting the hints that Bessie was more important than than previously assumed. But I kind of forgot this. I forgot the sacrifice thing. I forgot the Nereus thing.
Yeah.
I kind of wish he played a bigger part.
Nereus?
Yeah, but there was a lot going on in this in this area, so that's okay.
Well, yeah, that's another thing as far as representation that I wanted to hit on is not sure how I feel about the representation of homeless stuff, but it's also telling that the main thing that they do at San Francisco is homeless people. But I mean that's telling about San Francisco.
The more things change, unfortunately, this book is
I think it's fair to say the representation of homeless people is bad
in most things in general.
In most things in general, in this book for sure.
Yep.
Probably, I want to say if this book had been released more recently, now that Riordan seems to be fairly conscientious.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do this. Maybe he still would, but
yep.
It's bad. Here.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those areas that I don't think people think about as much because they don't have a voice in the same way a lot of other groups do.
Yeah.
No.
So could have gone without this.
Yeah.
We could have found out about maybe
honestly,
Zoe
Thorne could have just told them.
Thorne or just Zoe being like, "Oh my God, wait a second, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Where has that thing been following you this whole time?" Like that kind of thing. Like we could have gone without the journey to the pier.
Yeah.
So Dr. Thorne appears and tries to convince Thalia to wield the Ophiotaurus's power. Percy manages to shake her out of her stupor. He gets an iris message to Mr. D, and he saves them after Percy reluctantly asks for help. Grover then takes the Ophiotaurus back to Long Island.
Cool. I like that Mr. D is the one who kills Dr. Thorne.
Yeah. Who could have seen that coming?
And then he makes people go insane. It's cool too.
Yeah. I like the fact that Percy has to sacrifice the pelt to guarantee the safety of Grover and the Ophiotaurus as a sacrifice. So that's, I really like that because, again, kind of as you put Clara, this is important in Greek mythology and they're not forgetting that, elements of that.
So good.
Yes. So they visit Annabeth's dad, Dr. Chase, to ask for a car. He seems nice enough, and his family isn't that bad either.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see Annabeth have this weakness. In this particular instance, she is really letting her emotions rule over her intellect, and it's nice to see that, even though it's a sad thing and it's certainly a weakness. It's good to see for her.
Yeah, and I think that they do a good enough job with her dad to make me believe that he might not be a great dad, even though he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
There's enough there where I'm like, I can see him not being the most attentive person or the one who thinks through this kind of emotional stuff that well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's great that the stepmom is just nice.
Yeah. She's not this wicked stepmother that the other, Annabeth's trauma, frankly, makes her out to be. They don't seem like the kind of home that Annabeth, as a half sibling, would want to run away from.
Yeah.
But in part, I think because they do such a good job of showing that the Chases are trying, they're putting in the work on themselves to be better for Annabeth. And as torn as she is, it's because they're trying to meet Annabeth halfway and that she deserves it. So I really appreciate that because I feel like it's that kind of thing of he might never have asked for this complicated a life. He wants to just study his war machinery and live his academic life, but he has a daughter, he has this family, and he cares as best he can. So it's kind of a good redemption arc for Annabeth's dad that I wasn't expecting to get.
So definitely interesting. Question: in the book, does the stepmom have an accent, or is that just the audiobook?
I don't think she did at
No.
all.
She has a heavy, broken
English.
Asian
No.
accent.
No,
Really?
no.
I really don't think so. I'm checking, but I'm pretty sure I would have picked up on that.
They mention she's Asian in the book for
They
sure,
do.
but I don't think they wrote anything in a way that
No.
No, they do not. No. She literally is the picture of Americana making them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and fresh baked cookies. And I think it's really cool, actually, that they decide to make it an interracial relationship.
Oof. I was just flipping through the book on my phone. I have the Kindle version, and I couldn't find anything. I have nothing to add except that I'm sure it's not there.
Disappointed.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, what an appropriate reference for this particular episode.
They drive to the Garden of the Hesperides, where Zoe meets her sisters and is poisoned by the dragon Ladon. They continue to the place where Atlas used to hold up the sky, and they see Artemis taking on his burden. Atlas, Luke, and abound Annabeth arrive. Luke once again tries to convince Thalia to bring down Olympus, but she fights him instead. As a side note, Luke looks all sick and stuff this whole book.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we actually honestly hit a lot of this already.
Yeah. But it's a good scene.
Yeah.
I do feel a little bummed that that Annabeth isn't really like involved
At all in this.
Yeah.
Both
overall in the book and also in this.
I was surprised. In my brain, she does more in this third act thing, but no, she really doesn't.
Yeah. That's the one flaw of this book. And I understand it, like I get it, but I do miss Annabeth here.
Yep.
So Percy and Zoe face off against Atlas, but are losing badly. Percy takes the burden from Artemis. She fights Atlas and manages to force his burden back on him. Percy survives, but Zoe is badly injured. Luke is seemingly killed by Thalia.
Good action.
This action scene, this sequence is phenomenal.
Yeah. What do you guys think of Atlas?
I don't understand the choice to make him a guy in like a silk brown suit or something. Like their visual of him didn't really like make a lot of sense to me. I mean, him being like huge makes sense, but his like, I'm the general and I'm like sleek,
suave,
but also like broad, you know.
I picture him as sort of like Tombstone in Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay.
Very specific reference.
Okay.
And I like that. You think it should have been like wearing army fatigues and stuff?
Kind of, yeah. Like I feel like have him be more of a parallel to if Ares is like all biker gang bad boy, then what is like a more threatening version of that?
Yeah.
Or just like a general wears very like crisp, you know, clean lines and stuff, not necessarily fatigues. But something like that, you know, with lapels and stuff.
Yeah. Moving on.
They're surrounded by monsters, but Dr. Chase comes to the rescue with his Sopwith camel decked out with celestial bronze bullets.
This was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Oh, so exciting. I forgot about this.
Because they didn't need to bring him back. Like, they didn't have to have him be smart and helpful and, you know, have his scene of reunion with Annabeth, but I'm like glad they did, and it does work.
And it's the first time a mortal was really useful, aside from I guess Rachel earlier.
Yeah.
So this is the first book where mortals are actually, you know, doing stuff.
And they're doing bad things too. So actually it's interesting that all of that happens.
Yeah. I think it's nice to have it build this way in contrast to Sea of Monsters that kind of was a play-by-play of actual myths. So this one really strikes out on its own with like the mortal world being important.
Yep.
So Zoe dies and Artemis makes her a constellation.
Really cute scene.
Yeah.
I don't know if cute's the right word. Sweet scene.
Yeah. Touching.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the touch of the constellation thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might have brought a little tear to my eye. The group flies.
A little star to the sky.
The group flies via Pegasus to Mount Olympus. Annabeth knows Luke is still alive, and Percy is uncomfortable by that way she talks about him.
Yep.
A little bit of trouble there in paradise.
Aphrodite.
Yeah.
Let's just talk real quick about the fact that suddenly the Pegasi can fly all the way across the U.S. in like a half an hour. Early in the book, Blackjack was like dead from going to D.C.
Is it a time thing? Because like Percy had to be flying so slowly. So is it sort of like, you know, when like if you walk for a really long time, you don't necessarily hurt. But if you're like sort of standing for that same amount of time, it really hurts. Maybe it's like that.
Wow, that's a very specific explanation.
You thought a lot.
I don't know.
I thought it was more like Artemis blessed them, like with Artemis's blessing, even though she had to go faster than the Pegasus.
That was how I explain it to myself, but it also like they don't say that, so
yeah, I wish if they just included that a little bit, or if like Poseidon blessed the, like with Zeus's and Poseidon's blessings, the Pegasi could like go faster.
Well, my other thing is like, why can't Artemis just zap them to Mount Olympus?
It's a great question. I don't have an answer.
No apparition. Only flying horses.
The gods debate whether to kill Percy and Thalia. Thalia decides to become Artemis's new lieutenant, so she'll never turn 16 and fulfill the prophecy. Ultimately, Percy gets the votes to stay alive and even stops them from killing Bessie.
What do you think about Thalia's choice? Do you think it is earned?
Earned.
Because I like it. I just don't know if they earned it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I was all ready to say that I liked it.
They allude to her struggling with like being in the world now and with the way things are and everything that she's lost by dying.
Also, what happens with Luke and the fact that she'd been thinking about this kind of already.
Yeah.
So he'd already approached her. I
think it's also supposed to be that she felt that the power of being, what's the word I'm looking for? Like tempted by the Ophiuchus. And she just didn't want it to be about her. She didn't feel like it's actually interesting. It's a very sort of humble thing that she doesn't think that she's the one and doesn't think she should be the one that the prophecy is about. Generally, I think there's enough there to get me there. I guess wish maybe there was a little bit more, but like I might be being picky. You know?
Yeah, I think it's just a really interesting choice and one that, I mean, they talk about it. She was highly considering becoming a hunter in the past. So they set it up. It's not like she like wouldn't have done it before, but she felt the responsibility of Annabeth. Like she was the anti-Bianca. So, and in a way, this is her coming to terms with it of like, no, I am going to make this choice for myself and what matters to me and what is best for me and not for other people.
Yeah. I also think Zoe's death and the way that Artemis honors Zoe is a big part of it too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think on a storytelling level, it was a smart choice that now Thalia could sort of be peppered in and out of various books without having to take a lot of focus, because the hunters are always traveling. They're always popping in and out of things. And so she's kind of a powerful, playing piece, and it's kind of makes things simpler where she's not always there. So I think that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it is. But I'm also a little sad to only have her on team, like Camp Half-Blood in the one book.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you have a side note here, Dan, about Hades not really being present at the winter solstice.
Yeah, so I was a little confused about this because they say Yeah, you can go.
He's not an Olympian.
Okay. He isn't.
So traditionally, like you have the 12 Olympians. I don't believe he counts.
I believe that
I'll fact check myself, but
I believe they said in the first book that he's allowed for the winter solstice specifically because it's the shortest day of the year.
That's when Luke steals his helm.
Yeah. So I thought it was a little weird that he wasn't there, but that's a good point that he isn't one of the Olympians. I always forget that.
Right. But there aren't 13 of them.
He's just not an Olympian.
But he's not an Olympian. Isn't there a cabin for him?
No.
Oh.
There's definitely not a cabin for him, and he's definitely not one of the 12 Olympians.
Okay, then never mind. My bad.
He's just one of the big three.
I fact-checked myself.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was the thing that's throwing me off of him being one of the big three, but not one of the Olympians. Yeah. Or not having his own cabin.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. The only thing that really confuses me is the fact that I'm pretty sure they've said
they totally say that.
Yeah, and then the winter he shows up. But maybe he was late.
Or maybe he just didn't want to come after the shenanigans that happened the previous time that he went to a winter solstice party.
Yeah.
Fair argument.
So the gods throw a big party celebrating their victory. Athena tells Percy she doesn't approve of his friendship with her daughter, and Percy and Annabeth dance anyway, so...
So screw you.
Yeah. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but...
Any other thoughts on Athena?
She's scary.
She's scary. I love it.
Yep.
I love that she's not nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how not nice she is.
Back at camp, Percy tells Nico about Bianca's death and gives him the figurine. Nico tells Percy that he hates him for not saving his sister. He also says that he already knew that she was dead because he knew she was having her judgment at the fields. So suddenly 4 of the skeletal warriors appear and Nico unintentionally splits the earth to swallow them up. He then runs into the woods. Percy figures out that Nico's father is Hades.
Oh.
Who would have thought? I think it's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so
Very
good.
good.
God, I love Nico. My little baby.
Yes. It's a great way to end the book.
Yeah.
I mean, then we have this little coda with Pan awaiting Grover.
So,
Almost not needed, I feel.
Yeah. Grover arrives and then claims that he heard Pan's voice speak 3 words in his head, "I await you," and that's the real end. But that's like, it's a letdown after Hades was their dad the whole time.
Yeah. I will say when the thing happened with Grover, I was sort of like, no, shut up, Grover. I want to hear from Clarice. let the woman speak.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's get into our ranking in the Rick Riordan ranking time. And we're starting.
Let's try that again.
No, I loved it. Keep going.
So best hero. So every episode we rank best hero, best god, best baddie, best real world locale, and then we rank the books. The rules are we can put 2 of any category on a list per book if we want, but it's up for debate. So starting with best hero, right now at number 3 we have Clarice, number 2 we have Tyson, and number 1 we have Percy. My nominees for this are Zoe, Bianca, and Thalia.
Def not Bianca.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I think Zoe and Thalia both deserve to be on this list.
I agree-ish.
I agree. I think if we were to choose one, I'd say Zoe.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we just picked one. Let's start with Zoe. Where on the list? I think right under Percy.
That's what I was
just
thinking.
Gonna say. Yep.
And Thalia, bottom.
Really?
I think above Clarice.
I thought so too.
Okay, well then you guys win that one.
Okay, right. 2 against 1.
All right, so the list will be Clarice, then Thalia, then Tyson, then Zoe, then Percy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Best god. We have Hades and then Hermes at number 1. Nominees of Dionysus, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, and Aphrodite.
So, wait a second.
Yeah.
We decided, I don't remember our conversation exactly from book 1, but how did we not also decide to put Ares on this list?
Didn't like him.
Yeah, so
I don't know. It's a really good question.
Is best god meaning I don't want to go with most helpful god.
No. I'm thinking of all of these as best character kind of thing within each category, aside from locale, which is more complicated.
Right.
I'm just saying best use of them, basically.
Okay.
And they can move up and down the list throughout the books. Say Ares had a really good book 7 or something, we could then push him up.
I'm just saying, I think that we were silly to not even put him on the list.
I agree
from book
with
1.
Let's add him.
It's a really good point.
Let's add him at the bottom.
At the bottom,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what it was, Olga, was we were only doing 1
Yeah.
at that point, and so we probably would have had him, but then just didn't.
Yeah.
So I think picking only 2 out of this book is difficult.
I don't know if it is.
Really? So who are yours?
Artemis and Apollo.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was not going to put Apollo on.
Me neither, even though I love him to death.
I think we can all agree on Artemis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put Artemis first. Where do we want to put her?
Above Hermes.
Above Hermes.
I think she's number one.
Number one with a bullet or a bow and arrow. I like when Zoe was shooting arrows at the target sign.
Yeah. That was great. What a good moment.
All right, so if we don't say Apollo, what do you say instead of Apollo?
Athena.
That's what I was thinking too.
I don't think she did enough to warrant being like so important on this.
But
She nearly got him killed.
So did Dionysus, and we're not nominating him.
Dionysus would be my next up on the list, actually.
Okay.
To me, Athena did more with. She left more of an impression on me in her little amount of time than Apollo did.
It's gonna be difficult for me. I could choose either of these. Apollo's such a great, different characterization, but Athena is so strong with such a small amount of words.
Apollo might make it onto this list later on.
Apollo, well, here's the thing. Apollo will probably make it onto the best heroes list at a certain point. I don't know if he'll ever make it onto the best god list necessarily.
And he's not, I mean, he helps them a bit, but he's not actually like, okay, I can see why Athena has like more of an actual influence in her like leaving an impression on the story.
And I also just think she's a more interesting character. To me, like Apollo is kind of a joke.
Yeah, but her just like randomly appearing at the Hoover Dam was like not as interesting.
Didn't like that.
Yeah.
Do we want to just break our rule and put 3?
No.
Or do we want to only do 1?
Oh.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
Let's only put Artemis.
All right. So now the rankings are Ares, Hades, Hermes, and the other one.
Artemis. The one you just said a second ago.
All right. Best baddie, we have Circe, Medusa, and Polyphemus at number 1. I have written here Atlas, the Skeleton Warriors, Dr. Thorne. We could also have the Nemean Lion, the Aramanthian Boar, whatever. I think the Skeleton Warriors are better than Atlas.
I don't want them on the list.
Well, I think Atlas should be on the list.
Okay. Can we also put Dr. Thorne?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You guys don't like Dr. Thorne.
He's just like too cartoony to be.
I like him.
I think I needed that French accent. I really think that would have made it for me.
So, okay. Atlas, where do you want to put Atlas?
After Polyphemus.
I was going to put him below Medusa, actually.
I'm okay with that, too.
Okay, I'm fine with that. As long as he's not number 1.
Yeah, no.
Can I put Dr. Thorne above Medusa?
Yeah, I think that makes sense considering, like, even though she was hard to fight, he was a lot hard. Like, they would have lost to him.
Yeah.
But, and it was Dionysus that killed him. Like, that makes him kind of threatening.
I'm also, if you're not for it, I'm also okay with putting him underneath Medusa.
I would rather put him underneath Medusa.
Okay.
I think as a character, she had more real motivation, whereas he's just like, ha ha ha, I am the bad guy. Ha,
I like Frank's bad guys.
Yeah.
All right. The list is now Circe, Atlas, Dr. Thorne, Medusa, Polyphemus. Best real world location. Right now, we only have St. Louis Arch on there. I have the Smithsonian, Hoover Dam, and San Francisco as options. I'm just going to say we just do Smithsonian and Hoover Dam.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Smithsonian number 1.
Agreed.
Hoover Dam number 2?
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. I personally would put Hoover Dam number 1, but I'm fine with that order too.
If I had been, this is prejudice on my point, on my part, because if I had been to the Hoover Dam and could appreciate that, then it might be 1. Yeah. But as it is, I could be at that Air and Space Museum while it was happening. It was so good.
Now, the books. Right now, we have at number 2, Sea of Monsters. Number 1, Lightning Thief. Where are we putting Titan's Curse?
1.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. That was easy.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the ranking. And because this podcast ended up going pretty long, we're going to skip feedback this time. But if you want to be part of feedback in the future, you can either leave us a comment down below or email us at ourpodcastfeedback@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening.
What was the thing we came up with?
We didn't come up with anything.
No, we don't have anything. We had like Seize the Day or something because of Sea of Monsters, but that's nothing now.
With the weight of the world on our shoulder,
we say good day.
Adieu. Au revoir.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.